This lesson will focus on area and circumference of circles. So before we talk about circumference and area, first we should talk about some vocabulary. So when we're talking about circles, first we should probably define what a circle is. So if you think about a circle, everyone has a pretty good understanding this is what it should look like. So a circle is a set of points that are all equidistant from a center point. Okay, so if we think about a point on the circle, this point would be the same distance away from the center point as this one over here, or this one over here, or this one over here. All these points are all equidistant from a singular center point. Okay? Next thing we'll talk about is a radius. Okay? A radius is a segment from the center to the edge of a circle. So this guy right here, this blue line, would be a radius. Okay? And then another thing is diameter. So if we think about a diameter, this would be, it goes through the center, but the endpoints are both on the circle. So a segment that passes through the circle, or the center of the circle in particular, and has endpoints on the edge of the circle. Okay. A couple other quick things we'll talk about. Circumference, and we'll talk about this in just a second, how to calculate it. That would be like a perimeter of the circle, so that'd be the distance around the circle. Okay, and one other thing, this won't be part of the lesson or anything like that, but if we were to look at, say if I connected these 2 points here, this would be called a chord. So a diameter is a special case of a chord, so a chord basically just has endpoints on the circle, technically. Okay, so now that we've talked about the vocabulary, let's talk about pi and circumference and how the two are related. So if we look at a circle, and if we consider the diameter, for now let's call it d for diameter, and the distance around the circle, let's call it c for circumference. Okay? So for thousands and thousands of years, people have been making circles, measuring the diameter and measuring the distance around the circle, the circumference, and they've found a ratio. So you have c over d equals pi. Now pi is an irrational number, meaning that it's like 3.14159, and it continues. It doesn't ever repeat. It never starts to loop back on itself. It's an irrational number in that there is no pattern and it never ends. So we will use pi as a symbol for this, and if you need to estimate the distance, you can use a decimal such as 3.14159. That would be acceptable. So how these are related, and usually the formula is presented like this. The circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, which if you look at this equation here, it's a direct manipulation of this. If the circumference divided by the diameter equals pi, well then pi times the diameter has to equal the circumference. That's just generally how it's written, but this is where pi comes from. This is where it's originated from. It's the ratio between the diameter and the circumference of a circle. So, as an example, if we wanted to find the circumference of a circle with a diameter of, I don't know, 5 inches, all we'd have to do is take 5 times pi, which we could estimate that. We could take, if we wanted to, we could say that's about 5 times 3.14. Run to your calculator, and that would give you your distance in inches. Which, if we do that, we get the circumference of the circle is roughly, notice I'm using the squiggly lines because we're estimating here, 15.707. Or if we wanted to be exact, we could use this expression, just 5 pi. So if you're just asked to find the area, or not the area, the circumference of a circle, it's okay if you use this expression. That would be my preference. It's exact, it's better. However, if you need to create an estimate for something, the 15.707 would be okay. Okay, now that we've talked about circumference, let's talk about area. So if we're looking at a circle, in this case we're going to look at the radius versus the area. And remember, area is how much space this circle takes up. So, in this case, there's no fancy derivation. I'm just going to give you the formula and we'll talk about how to use it. So, area is going to equal pi times your radius squared. So, as an example, let's say this radius was 7. Okay? So that would mean the area is going to equal pi times 7 squared, which, if I simplify a little bit, exponents come first in order of operations. So this would be pi times 49. Now, as an exact expression, we could say this is 49 pi. Okay? If we're trying to actually calculate a distance here for like a word problem, then we would have to continue this out. We're going to take the 49 times the 3.14 as our rough estimate. So we'll do that. Run to my calculator here real quick. I get roughly 153.938. And in this case, we weren't given any units, so we would write units squared. Remember, area, we're talking about units squared. If we're talking about circumference, it's just a distance around, so plain old units, plain old inches, whatever it ends up being.